Salam alaikum. Hello, this is Piero San Giorgio, author of Survive the Economic Collapse. Today I'm in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Well, I'm actually near Jeddah. I'm here I was invited by a client. As you know, I'm doing some consulting to help people to preserve their wealth and probably their life in the coming future, as unfortunately the world's economy is going to collapse, in my opinion. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Saudi. As I do every time I travel, I try to do a small video blog on the countries that I'm visiting. Now, Saudi, first of all, I want to say that every time I came to Saudi Arabia, the welcoming and the friendliness of the people have been very, very good. And actually, I really like Jeddah is one of the most, I think, interesting cities in Saudi. It's on the south coast, the Red Sea, which is in front of me. And I also want to say that the hospitality is always good. However, I will also say in this video what I believe is the truth and for sure the reality of the economy. And I hope I will not make enemies, but for sure know that when you say something about a country or about the problems that a country may have, it's not because you don't like them, it's because you try to say the reality so that people can do something to improve. So do not take this as either an insult, which it isn't, and of course, only as a positive and constructive critic, and hopefully I can come back to your country. Anyway, so in the past, I've came to Saudi Arabia quite a lot of times to do some business when I was with Oracle and when I was with Salesforce.com. And so I did business with Saudi Aramco, of course, Saudi Telecom, Silverline, Sabic, the Gazaz Group, SBG, and others. So I certainly don't pretend to know the country very well, for sure, but certainly a little bit. And of course, if you read my books, available in English or in Arabic, you will see that Saudi plays an important part in the world's economy. Well, first of all, it is quite a big economy today. It's about $1 trillion in GDP, and if you think of the people, the GDP per capita is about $55,000. So it makes Saudi a very, very rich country. And of course, we know that Saudi is well known for oil production, and oil production is mostly in the north towards the Gulf, towards Dammam and those regions. And clearly, it is today, I think it's the second biggest oil producer in the world, slightly behind Russia and before the United States. I think Saudi produces about 9.6 million barrels per day, which is considerable, of course, and still has some reserves, which, of course, are top secret. No one really knows how many reserves there is. The official number is about 200 billion barrels. However, we really don't know if that is true, if there are more or if there are less. So every time you do an analysis of a country and to see what is the threat, the risks, but also what are the opportunities, you have to look into, first of all, you have to look at the geography. And Saudi is first of all, it's a huge country. It's over 2 million square kilometers, so it's a huge country. Of course, most of it is arid, and actually desert in some cases. And actually, I think in Saudi there is the biggest continuous sand desert in the world. Of course, Saudi is a fairly young country. If everyone who has seen Lawrence of Arabia know a little bit of the story, but definitely the current country was founded in 1932 by the Saud dynasty, and that's why it's known Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's an absolute monarchy, of course. And for me, when you look at geography, you have to see that while it is mostly desert and arid landscapes, there are mountains in the south, and those mountains on the south do make a microclimate on the Red Sea coast, and that microclimate enables some agriculture. Now, agriculture is very small; it's only 3% of the economy in Saudi, but definitely it does exist. And in the mountains in the south, I think the region is Azir. There are some fertile lands and there is some agriculture, and with good management of water, food can be grown. Now, the problem is that there used to be about 100 years ago in 1900, there used to be about 1 million people living in Saudi, maybe 1.5 million. And I think in 1950 it was 3 million. So it doubled in 50 years. And it doubled again in 20 years. In 1970, I think it was 6 million inhabitants. And today Saudi is close to 34, according to some figures. The official number is 28 and something. But definitely, that's a lot of people to feed. And obviously, Saudi Arabia is not able to feed its people by far, obviously. So it is importing 95% of its food, obviously, from abroad. Meat from New Zealand and Australia, food stuff from all over the world, and so on. And obviously, it can do that because it is a very rich country with a lot of oil revenues. Now, if you think of this growth of population, which this is the main problem Saudi Arabia has. It used to be 1 million people, and now almost 30. And to be fair, out of those 30, there's about 8 to 10 of foreigners, of foreign workers. And that's the official numbers. Now, foreign workers can be sent away. They can be sent home, as Saudi did last year in 2014. They sent, I think, 4 million people away, if I'm correct. But definitely, still, it remains still between 25 and 30 million people to feed with only imports. And that can be bought by oil. So the oil economy is really important because clearly it is about 75% of revenues and 11% of the GDP. And I think it does provide 80% of the jobs in the private sector. So it's a huge, huge part of the economy. Now, is oil going to disappear? Well, not soon in Saudi, for sure. And definitely Saudi will need to export that oil to be able to import food and of course work the machinery and get the skills necessary to work everything that's needed to make sure that all these people, these millions of people, can get water besides food. Now, there is also, the 85% of the people live in big cities. Riyadh is over 5 million people. Jeddah here is between 3 and 4 million people, and there's at least 1 million people in Medina and at least 1 million people in Mecca. And of course, these urban people require very complex systems, like everywhere in the Western world. It is a very developed country. Therefore, you have a very complex system that bring food to supermarkets, water to your tap, and clearly, all of this requires electricity, requires a functioning economy, which requires oil. Now, as I said, oil is not going to disappear anytime soon in Saudi, otherwise it's a disaster. But certainly one of the problems is that what if the economy collapses in the United States or in Western Europe, or even if demands from the Asian countries or other BRICS countries decrease because of the global meltdown? Well, suddenly no one needs to buy as much oil, and competition becomes very, very difficult between all oil producers, and then revenues drop. And one of the big problems now, obviously, that Saudi will have is what if the revenues drop? Now, you have to also understand that Saudi Arabia has 32% of its population that is less than 14 years old. And 60% of the population is less than 25 years old. So I don't know what you guys do, but you do have sex a lot, for sure, because you make a lot of kids. You make a lot of children. Now, this is a problem, my friends, because while I also have 4 children, so I know what it is to have a lot of, sex. But certainly to have kids is great. But this level of growth in a population is extremely, extremely dangerous, and it's not by chance that a lot of young people from Saudi are restless, without a job, and sometimes participate and go abroad. There was a lot of Saudi in the Iraqi insurgency. There's a lot of Saudis who went to fight in Syria and now in Iraq, in the ISIS. And this is only explained also by the fact that there's so many young and restless people. How to use these youth, how to educate them, and of course how to give them a job is going to be, I think, an impossible task, but certainly one of the daunting tasks that the country will have. The other potential friction, but I don't think it's such a big friction, is there's two religions in Saudi. 85 to 90% is Sunni, and then of course there's between 10 and 15% who is Shia, mostly in the south near Yemen, and of course we'll come to the problems in Yemen that exist right now. We're in April 2015. So the other interesting element about Saudi, something that always fascinated me, is that despite this country being completely protected by the United States, it has one of the biggest military in the world. I think it's the fourth biggest budget in the world in terms of military expenditure. And it's the highest in the world. 10% of its GDP is invested into military equipment and military budgets. So here, of course, you have the land army, the air force, the navy, which are very large and powerful with good equipment. I cannot say about the training and the quality, but certainly because they are not used in wars recently, except now in Yemen, and we have to see the efficiency of that. But certainly in terms of equipment, it has top-notch, very recent, high-tech, best, top of the world equipment, and they have the oil to make it run, by the way. So Saudi could become a very big power in terms of military production. And of course there is the Saudi National Guard as well, which is another separate sort of armed organization. So if I take some of my notes, what are the challenges here in Saudi Arabia? First of all is population growth and the youth. Clearly, this is a problem, and because it grows and because revenues from oil are not increasing, there is, by mathematics, a decline of per capita income for the country. So that will cause social tensions. The other element is that education for all these young people and probably giving them enough jobs is going to be a very difficult task. 32% of the people are less than 14 years old. And you need to educate these people, you need to bring them to school. Otherwise, they end up very ignorant. And no one wants that in any country, because ignorance does not provide people who have the skills for work and for any work. You know, even manual labor requires a fairly good education, technical education. So you have problems of poverty, and it is within poverty that you find extremism, and then you find revolt. And I'm sure that the people in power in Saudi do not want revolt because their position is extremely lucrative for them and their families. So obviously they don't want to have people revolting. So they better invest into making sure that there's less poverty and that most people are well educated, which also brings the other side of the coin, that well-educated people want more political rights and political power. And of course, an absolute monarchy is not the place where people have a lot of rights and power. You know, the king and of course the institution that monarchy is will need to work with that, and it's not obvious. Now, absolute monarchy has some advantages, but also has some problems when people become very educated. So there is this paradox that Saudi will have to face. Health is a problem. Health is a problem in Saudi, whether it's because for lack of work or too much excellent food here. The food is very, very good in Saudi. You have 30% of the people who have type 2 diabetes, and of course obesity and all the health problem that goes with this modern lifestyle and way too much food and not enough exercise. Long time, when in the past it was people had to walk a lot and move a lot and use camels and ride horses, and now, of course, with cars and the modernity and with lots of plentiful and excellent food around, obesity, diabetes, all these problems that come from the American lifestyle have arrived here. So that is going to be a big problem, huge cost, and of course incapacitation of a large part of the population. You know, if you're completely obese, you cannot work as much as others, even intellectually, so let alone physically. So this is a big problem, and I know the health authorities. I've worked with the national hospitals. I know they're very concerned, and in terms of education, in terms of healthy ways of living that they need to put into place in this country. Another big problem is, of course, water and food production. Water is sort of sorted through, first of all, desalinization. There is huge plants to desalinize, which require, of course, a lot of electricity, which requires a lot of oil. But these are very important to desalinize water and also to distribute it. Water in Saudi is very expensive. In some towns, it's more expensive per bottle than if it was petrol. So I remember this discussion with a friend here that said to me, well, we're lucky we have oil, but you are even more lucky than us because you have water. And he probably is right. So they have to burn the oil to generate water from the sea and from other sources, and in some cases to import. Food is the same. Food production is a very tiny amount of what is necessary to feed the 30 million people. So there is a lot of imports, but also Saudi has invested a lot into neighboring countries across the Red Sea, in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in Uganda, to buy huge parts of lands where it can control, or at least so is the theory, food production. And why I say so is the theory is because, yes, you can control food production while things are stable. But what if these countries take over those lands for their own needs? Well, then you have a problem. What if the economy slows down and you cannot import enough food to feed your population? Then you have revolution. So that's the problem. And so what? Then the military will have to invade these neighboring countries to control food production. Then this means military adventures, which is very expensive, and you're never sure of the result. So Saudi will have a very important place to play, of course, in the region in the near future. And as the world economies, I think, collapses, there are risks. And these risks for people who live in Saudi Arabia to prepare is that if there are less oil revenues, whether it's production or the Western economy is buying less, then the economy of Saudi is in deep trouble and it could collapse. If there is more and more of these terrorist attacks or tensions between Iran and the Shia population and the Sunni and Saudis, there may be also social struggles and potential huge problems, huge costs, and perhaps disruption of those oil revenue flows. So this is also a big risk. And there is a risk. Remember that the United States, which has been the protector of Saudi Arabia, could very well change its policy and suddenly decide that Saudi needs partitioning. And there are plans. I've seen plans in the United States military that basically say we are going to cut Saudi in 4 or 5 pieces. Now, this plan does not mean that they want to do that, but it's a potential that they could do. And that means that they could make the south part an independent country, the central part a very poor and very isolated country, and then the north part, where there's most of the oil fields, a very rich and very, let's say, less populated area, easier to control perhaps. So this is a potential risk. And of course, the current invasion or war, or intervention rather, I should say, intervention into Yemen. Yemen is a source of food production, by the way. That's an important element. Is very interesting in that construct, and we'll see how that continues. I think, now, if I was the Saudi planners, I would not want to stay in Yemen. No one can control that country. It's big, it has mountains, it has fierce people. if this is a hit and run, well, we'll see what are the results. But if the Saudi army stays in Yemen, it's going to be a huge cost for Saudi Arabia and a destabilizing factor. And let's not forget that there is another element, is that the creature that has become of ISIS and Daesh and the remains of Al-Qaeda are still around, and they can still create havoc doing terrorism. And not terrorism here and there, but if they target the economy with the oil and the pipelines and the refineries, this can be a risk as well. So clearly, Saudi is facing, of course, big challenges. So my advice for Saudi people is, as I write in my books, think autonomy, think self-sufficiency, think health, think how you can help to transform yourself and your families into more efficient and autonomous entities, whether it's because you move out of the city, or even if you live in the city, how you can be less dependent of an economic system which will have problems in the future. I also advise Saudis to remember their past. You come from very proud and dignified warriors. And warriors do not go into luxury and 4x4 cars and too much food. And warriors train, they live outside the big cities also. They prepare, they have water, they have their food, they have their family links, which I know you still have, But focus on that. Focus on autonomy. Focus on self-sufficiency. Focus on your clan, on your tribe, on your ability to withstand the economic crisis that happens. And I think you will discover also in a way within your religion, within Islam, and forgive me for not for talking about Islam while not being a Muslim, of course. But you can find in the Quran some interesting elements that encourage you to become autonomous, self-sufficient, because that is the only way where you can be, in a way, free from material and crises, is that you don't need a complex system. And if I wanted to be religious, I would say that the only thing you need is yourself, your work, and of course, God and your religion, of course. But think about that also as a spiritual source of motivation to manage yourselves in the crisis that will happen. So, as I always say to everyone in the world that reads my books and listens to me, really think autonomy, really think self-sufficiency, really think how you can change your lives for yourself, for your families, for your friends, for the people you are close linked with, and maybe even your country, to become more powerful by being more resilient, more free because you're more autonomous, and that's what real man or a real woman or a real family is someone who doesn't need as much the system around to survive and to thrive. So with that, shukran. I'm going to have a nice Lebanese dinner, and I'll see you soon. And leave me questions, leave me your comments, leave me your critics. Please join me on my Facebook or subscribe to my YouTube channel and my videos. And for sure, I hope you fare well, and all my best, and Mektub. Take care. Ciao.